Welcome to another episode of our winter expedition. I am Edmark Xavier, your favorite tourism scientist and sustainability activist. Grab a snack now and watch the third video of our winter expedition. The decision to conduct one of the technical visits in Quebec was taken after studying the distinctive factors. Quebec is a region of economic development in Canada and was one of the 5 regions addressed by the Symposium on Sustainable Tourism, promoted by the Tourism Industry Association of Canada in January 2023. I was afraid to conduct the technical visit in Quebec because I still do not speak French, the predominant language of the province. However, the most key factor was my contact on the first day of the 2022 Tourism Congress with Trevor Diabo, interim tourism development agent at Ganawagi Tourism. As of November 22, 2022, Trevor Diab and I have been talks to organize a visit by EXA Group Canada to the Ganawagi indigenous community, home of approximately 20,000 inhabitants of the Mohawk peoples, the largest First Nation community in Quebec. Even before deciding to conduct the technical visit in Ganawagi, Trevor arranged with farmers in the community who produce the famous maple syrup, a presentation by EXA Group Canada, related to the Strong Farm and Rural Shores Extension Program. Trevor spoke with the Indigenous Council and the other stakeholders responsible for the environment, education, tourism, and economic development, so that these professionals could welcome EXA Group Canada and hear about the sense of the Strong Farm and Rural Shores Extension Program. Since our first brief conversation in the early hours of November 22, 2022, Trevor has been dedicated to paying attention to our work and has valued our program proposition. Undoubtedly, Trevor Diabo is among the biggest supporters of Strong Farm and Rural Shores extensions. A professional is eager to bring sustainable solutions to the community in which he lives and to introduce the world to the roots of the Mohawk people. Hi, Trevor.
Hi, Edmund.
How are you?
I'm good, and you?
I'm perfect, thank you. Please tell me about your place, this wonderful welcome center.
So this is the Ganawagi Visitor Welcome Center. This is where we basically give people information, and we also book all our tours here. You can either book online, call us, even just walk in. During the summer, we usually have someone that's here to be available for walk-in tours. This actually historically used to be where the guards were living. So this was like the guards' main office back when this was a fort. The Fort St. Louis is what it was called. And this would have been where the French soldiers would have been stationed. Way back when. So this is our main office. Currently, we're in the process of building a new visitor center, but we're always going to keep this one as well. It's just kind of like we're going to have 2 different offices once the other one is built. Because there's going to be some interesting things at the newer building. We're going to have the theater there. We're also going to have our tourism office, and as well, the language and cultural center is also going to be at the new building.
Okay.
So,
what kind of tours you offer here?
So we offer walk-in tours. We offer tours of Ganawagi, which can either be walking outdoors, it can be a bus tour. We do tours of different monuments. So there's like the Quebec Bridge. There is different crosses that kind of represent certain things, but I'll show you those later. And we have a couple of special tours that we're trying to develop. So there's the possibility of ice fishing tours. We're planning to have snowshoeing tours. We're also establishing connections to have a kind of like a nature walk tour where we have a specialized professional that comes in. They take the tour group, they bring them out in nature, and they show them different medicinal plants, maybe different plants that you can forage and eat. And this kind of like goes back to our traditional roots of, being out in nature and finding everything that we need out in nature. So we're trying to connect people back to our cultural roots and show outsiders that this is how we used to live and this is how we used to survive. So it's kind of like, something that we're really interested in developing, because we get a lot of requests actually for more traditional and culturally relevant tours. Right now, we only really have the Language and Cultural Center to offer that's culturally related. And in the summer, we're hoping to actually extend our tours to boat tours and fishing tours. So we're in the process of, establishing a lot of different partnerships, connections, and developing new tours to open up to tourists.
Perfect. How many tour guides you have here?
So right now, we actually have a list of on-call tour guides. I would say that we have 8 tour guides total. That does not include myself, because I was a tour guide, but now that I have my new position, I don't normally give tours unless absolutely necessary. But we have one bilingual tour guide who is usually always available. And there's another bilingual tour guide, but they work during the week, so they're not as available. I would have been the other bilingual tour guide, but we're in the process of getting more bilingual tour guides because there are a lot of French requests. Living in Quebec, we have a lot of people that speak French, even from France. I had given a tour on Saturday to a family who came from France, and so there was nobody else available to give the tour, so I filmed.
What they came to do here in Kalamaki?
So when people first hear of Ganawagi, they say, what is it? They've never heard of it before. Maybe if you do a Google search, it might say First Nations reservation. It doesn't give you very much. So in the case of the tour the other day, they said, oh, well, we'd like to learn more about this First Nations reservation. So they requested to have a tour of Ganawagi, and they would also like to visit the Language and Cultural Center. So I brought them to the Language and Cultural Center. I gave them a tour there. There's a lot of information there to cover. There's some nice artifacts to show, as well as some paintings, different things like that. And after that, I brought them over here. We did a little tour outside, just showing some of the historical buildings and sites in the area. And I brought them next door to our interpretive center, which has a lot more religious information, I guess you could say, because we have an indigenous saint here. Her name is Saint Catherine de Caquita, and she's actually the only indigenous saint that was ever around, basically. Especially for our people, it's kind of important that we explain that she's not just a regular saint, Like people come here who are very religious, knowing Cattery before they even get here. So people from Europe, they say, oh, well, we want to go to Ganawagi because we know that St. Cattery is there. A lot of people from Montreal don't even know that we have an indigenous saint here. And she was canonized about 10 years ago, I'd say. Her tomb is actually in the church next door. And there's a lot of information about her in the Interpretive Center.
That's interesting. Thank you.
No problem.
I felt honored to have received the support of this indigenous community to make the visit and absorb the needs, gaps, and challenges faced by the Mohawk people in Quebec. This was the best decision I made regarding our technical visits through Canada. Through this visit, I had my first contact with the reality of indigenous peoples and the marketing and communication model Canada adopts to speak about reconciliation truth.
So originally, this is what we would have lived in. This is what the inside of a longhouse would have looked like. On the bottom bunks, you would have your sleeping quarters. So everybody would sleep with their families on the bottom. And on top is actually where we would store our foods. So as you can see, there's baskets, there's certain pots. They may have been filled with corn, any type of vegetables, meats, things of that sort. Our corn was hanging. We could have had maybe fish or meat hanging. And what happens is, because of the central fires throughout the longhouse, it would act as like almost like a smoker for certain things. That's also a reason why we can't sleep on the top, is because of the fire and the smoke. But it served two purposes, having our food stored on top. So the first reason is because of insects and bugs, to keep it out of reach of them. Mm-hmm. And the second is because technically you don't want to be sleeping up there because it's so hot and because of the smoke.
This modern longhouse, they have the same structure inside?
No, the modern longhouses don't look anything like this.
Okay.
So
why?
We were actually living in these like a long time ago. This is where we lived. Today, it's mainly for ceremony, for ceremonial purposes. So there's no need to have bunk beds and things of that sort. It's more of like a representation of the longhouse. And like the more modern longhouses are actually created because it's more weather impermeable, for snow and stuff like that. Sure, this might have been impermeable to a certain extent, but modern day longhouses are built with modern materials. So it's basically like living in a regular house. And, it's more for, singing, dancing, anything culturally relevant, whereas this was basically where we used to live and do our ceremonial traditions. So if you could picture this being anywhere from, let's say, 30 feet wide to a minimum of 100 feet long. So 200 feet long, 300 feet long was normal back in the day. This would have served maybe hundreds of families all living in the same building.
Wow.
And each longhouse is actually under control by a clan mother. And that clan mother is tied to a specific clan. So let's say that this longhouse is the Turtle Clan longhouse. I'm Turtle Clan. So within this longhouse, everybody is a turtle. Mm-hmm. They're all Turtle Clan, and they're all part of my family. Could have been brother, sister, aunt, uncle, what have you. Technically, they're all my family because they all live in the same longhouse as me, and they're all my clan. Mm-hmm. So if I want to marry someone, I can't marry within the same longhouse. Technically, I'm marrying someone in my family. So I have to go to another longhouse that is not Turtle Clan, maybe wolf, bear, whatever it may be. And that's where I would go to start a family. So I would move in with my wife. Let's say, for example, my girlfriend is Wolf Clan. So I would move into the Wolf Longhouse with her. It would be all her family. And that's where we would raise our kids. And our children would actually receive her clan because everything is passed down matrilineally. We were a matriarchal society. So basically, everything that we did was, related to the mother. And the mother was usually the one in charge. The clan mother was kind of like one of the highest on the totem pole, I guess you could say. But basically, what we would do is we would have all of the men in the village to help out. They would put all of these main posts into the ground. So you see them just going straight into the ground, so many feet. And that would be the core structure of the longhouse. So that's like the bones of it. And then everything else that you see on the outside is all the protective layers. So there would have been bark of certain trees. Remember I was explaining earlier, because of diseases, we can't use them anymore. But we would have used the bark from those trees as basically covering to keep it impermeable, whether like keep it from water, rain, whatever have you. Basically, it was very well insulated, using different things like maybe moss or certain animal pelts. Maybe we would have stuffed hair in there, things of that sort. And if you think about it, between the fires, all of the body temperature of everybody inside, plus the insulation, it wouldn't be very cold inside of there. So even if you think like, how didn't they freeze when it was minus 40 outside? Might have been minus 40 outside, but inside it was probably about 5 to 10 degrees. So it was still very warm inside, even though people think, you know what, the wind could have been passing through. What if there's rain coming in? It could have been so cold. But, because of these different reasons, it was very warm inside. And what we would do after 10 to 15 years is we would take whatever we could from the longhouse and we would transport it to a new location. So if you could imagine yourself, every day you wake up, you go and you harvest a tree for firewood. Every day you go out and you hunt. You go and you pick berries. After 10, 15 years of doing that same exact routine, you could just imagine how far they would have to start walking to find food, to find more wood. So after a while, it didn't really make sense for them to travel so far. So what they would do is they would disassemble the entire longhouse. They would take whatever they could with them, and they would travel to a new location, further, wherever it may be. And that's how we were sustainable.
Okay. A nomadic life.
It was semi-nomadic, because we did stay in one place for about 10 to 15 years. Then we would move. Another 10, 15 years, then we would move. It's not like we were always on the move. It's not like we were always one place. So we call it like semi, because it was a little bit of both. But it was very sustainable. So nowadays, when you look at sustainability and like the homes that we're building, they're not sustainable. This was sustainable. We reuse the materials. It's not something that we decided to do ecologically, to be eco-friendly. It's something that we did because we understood that reusing materials was very important in order to keep a nice balance between nature. So it's just one of the ways how my ancestors actually, were eco-friendly. And today we strive to be like that when this was around for thousands of years. And it was a very good idea that should have never been changed, But the assimilation and colonization and the arrival of the settlers, all of this either got burned down or was lost. So
it's so sad. Okay.
Here we have dolls, corn husk dolls. As you can see, those are actually the husks of the corn. It's dried and made into dolls. They're actually usually a little bit smaller than that. But this is kind of like a really good representation of, for example, our clothing, moccasins, headdresses, and if you see the three feathers standing here, that actually symbolizes our people. So the Ganyakehaga Nation is actually represented by the three feathers that stand. If it was two feathers standing and one was on its side, it's a different nation. So we knew who the other nations were by looking at how many feathers were on their head or how they were placed.
Okay.
But yeah.
Well, thank you for that. It's important information, no?
Yeah.
I start to understand more. Wow, thank you.
No problem.
Details made difference, no?
Yeah. That's it's little details like that we thought about that really made us different and stand out, because everything we did was for a purpose. It's not like we said one day we're gonna have three feathers on our head and that's it. No, they said, okay, well, we need a way to distinguish ourselves. So how can we do that? That's what they came up with. So
Design.
everything was done with a purpose. Literally everything. It's pretty crazy. We'll see later on. There's a few other things that we did for a reason, and I'll explain why. But for that, it's pretty much it.
Thank you. It's a beautiful space.
Yes.
Have a meeting room.
It's very nice in here. In there is actually a
Archives.
secure archives, maps, ancient maps. So some maps were given to us by the Canadian military, because when they did their surveillance and they did mapping of the reservation, how many hundreds of years ago, we asked for a copy and we got some. So there's like certain things in there that are temperature sensitive, maps, baskets, things of that sort that need to be in there at all times. Behind you, you have one example of a basket that we use. Here we have a cradle board.
What is that?
So this is actually to transport babies.
Okay. Oh,
Nowadays, you think of a car seat.
Mm-hmm.
This was our original car seat.
Wow.
So on this side, the baby would be standing on that ledge,
Mm-hmm.
and they would be strapped against the wood. So they would be wrapped in whatever materials we had, and they would be secure to that board. And we would actually be able to hang the cradle board on, let's say, tree branches, for example, while the mothers were doing their daily work. They could have been farming or gathering, whatever it was, and the baby can watch. So it was kind of like a dual purpose. They were almost always either painted or carved with some type of design. So this, we could probably make a pretty good guess that that baby was a Bear clan because of the bear. Here's the same thing.
Oh, we have some different sign for these ones.
Well, I think what happened was these feathers actually fell over with time.
Okay.
Otherwise, they would have been standing still. So they should have been like that, but
Time.
I'm sure. I'm guessing with time, because as you can see, they're a little bit disassembled right now.
It's for food.
This is actually for corn flour.
Okay.
So we would pound the dried corn, usually white corn, and it would make corn flour, and then we would go ahead and make cornbread, things of that sort. So
it's really interesting because in Brazil and Mexico we have the same thing for the same reason, huh?
And I just had a family in here on Saturday who were from Africa, and they said they use the same exact thing. So indigenous people around the world.
Yeah, we are just one people, huh?
Exactly. So here you have some pottery, some more baskets, and some musical instruments. So this right here makes a very distinct sound.
Yeah.
It's called a water drum, and there's actually water inside of it. So when you hear it, it makes a very distinct sound that isn't normal to any drums. The rattles, usually they would put like dried corn kernels inside of it, and when you shake it, that's what would make the noise. In these baskets, actually interwoven is sweetgrass. So I'm not sure, I don't think you got to see any sweetgrass yet, but it's something that grows naturally around here, and it actually smells really sweet. It has a really nice, delicate smell.
Okay, good flavor.
I don't know about flavor. I'm sure they used to use it in cooking.
Okay.
I feel like they might have used it before, but it might have been lost with time because I don't know anybody that cooks with it anymore.
Or make a tea.
You probably could make a tea with it. Usually people have it in braids, and kind of like sage, they'll burn it, and it smells very, very nice. I'll actually show you in the truck later. I think I have a braid.
This is an example of longhouse.
Yeah. So the inside of the longhouse is the picture over there. This would be the outside of the longhouse. You can actually see the bark now, and part of the structure behind it, like the bones. And on the left-hand side there is the palisade, or the wall. So that would have kept out any intruders, any invading nations, I guess you could say. Here we have three of our clans.
You had a lot of invaders?
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of
not just the colonizers.
Not just the colonizers, but we had a lot of different nations who did try. Some were successful in burning down some villages, but that's something that we kind of always had to deal with. So, Ganyakehaga means people of the flint.
Who is Flint?
Flint is actually it's a stone. So, you know the flint rock that is inside of a lighter?
Yeah.
The little flint that's in there that causes the spark?
Yes.
That's people of the flint. So, if you could imagine, people of the flint probably meant that we were either good at making fires, or the flint could have served as arrowheads. So that's just one of the names for our people. But we're also known as Haudenosaunee, which is people of the Longhouse. Okay. That's Haudenosaunee. I'll show you on the other side here. It's actually right here if you want to look at it right now. Haudenosaunee. And that's actually where they talk about the traditional farming of the Three Sisters. It's The agricultural base was complemented by hunting, fishing, trapping, and gathering on a seasonal basis. Ganyakehaga were extremely wealthy within the forests of their traditional territory.
What is the difference between the clans?
So we have 3 clans. We have wolf, turtle, and bear as Ganyakehaga people. There's many different types of clans. Within the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, I believe there's 9 different clans. I'll have to check on the other side there. But each one kind of has their own definition, I guess you could say. So turtle is said to be more of like wisdom. Bear is more of like strength. And I believe wolf is something like intelligence or something of that sort. But it's different with every nation, to be honest. There's some that say turtles are for luck. There's others that say, other things. Here you also have the Aguazasne and Ganasadage mentioned. These are 2 of the communities that...
I'm going.
Yeah, hopefully. Here we have some artwork that was done by the person that you're supposed to be getting an interview with.
Okay.
Tom.
Oh, it's so beautiful. He drawed?
I believe he painted all of these.
Wow.
I'm not sure. You have to ask him during your interview. But he can explain a little bit better some of these.
Oh, this one is really beautiful.
And that's the 50 chiefs.
And they had this meeting?
Yeah. So we're going to talk about the 50 chiefs over there.
Okay.
But that was part of our traditional governing system.
So
Here, can you guess?
for
Deer.
deer?
Yeah. So normally what would happen is we would dehair it, like what's happening right now. And every animal has the exact amount of brains to tan this hide. So when you kill this deer, you take its brain, you boil it in water, mix it up, makes like a kind of like a looks like soup, but you don't want to eat it. Paint it onto this, and you leave it out in the sun, and you stretch it and you stretch it, and what happens is it creates a natural tanning for this to become that. And
Wow.
that is what our clothing is basically made out of, is animal hides. There were some nations, especially up north, who would use hides and leave the hair on, and they turn the hair to face you, and this would be on the outside. So it would be like that. It would be worn so that the insulating layer is against you, and it keeps you very warm. Here we have some of the maps of our traditional territory. So as you can see, Ganyakehaga, people of the Flint, you got people of the Standing Stone, people of the Hills, people of the Pipe, people of the Great Hill. And that is exactly what's here. So the 5 nations, we'll start all the way on the east because that's who we are, people of the Flint. And then we have people of the Standing Stone, keepers of the fire, people of the swamp, and people of the Great Hill. And those are the original 5 nations. We call it 6 nations today because Tuscarora was added later on. So they're not mentioned in there because they weren't part of the original Haudenosaunee Confederacy, but we adopted them in later.
Okay.
When you look at this map, you can see the red is...
This is Northern Ontario?
Yep. So Kingston, Tyendinaga, Wata,
And
Cornwall is over here.
Mohawk Nation Territory.
Yeah.
This is up to
London, Ontario, Niagara Falls,
Kenora.
Rochester, Allegheny, Cattaraugus, Syracuse, New York, Albany.
Wow.
So our traditional territory was immense.
Yeah.
Now,
All this land.
now we have that, that, and that left.
Just the points, the colored points.
And just in red is us.
Wow.
So not even green, yellow, blue. Those are other nations. They're part of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, but those are the other territories of the other reservations of the other nations. So, as you can imagine here, Akwesasne seems like one of the bigger ones, but this is all on the American side.
Okay.
The Canadian side is just a little bit there. And it's not even represented properly by this map. But that's basically what we have left from this entire, probably, I would say, millions of acres. I couldn't even give you a good estimate.
I'm very sorry for that, no?
It wasn't you who took it.
Yeah.
It's the European colonizers. The rise of colonization. You know, this is what happened. So, we were reduced to tiny little reservations from...
And they are trying to get this piece of land that your people has now too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They're trying to take everything from us at all times. They never let up. So, they try to, cut up the entire reservation between the St. Lawrence River, the train tracks that I showed you, the highways which meet to go onto the bridge. These are all just different ways to divide the reservation that was already small as it is. Here you got some of our ancient weapons, clubs, hatchet / tomahawk, I'm not sure what you want to call it. This, if you could believe, is actually, I would say, as hard as a rock. On certain trees, they're called knots, and they grow on branches. And basically, that ball that you see there is harder than the rest of the branch. So it's like having a rock attached to a branch.
Okay.
And that's what would crack skulls, basically. So those are only some of the weapons that we had. That's another type of headdress. Here we got Turtle Clan. On the other side, it was bear and wolf. Here you got an arrow point. Looks damaged for whatever reason. Somebody was napping it. A very old cradle board. And this is what they would have wrapped the baby with.
Okay.
So that type of material. See this material here? That is actually the intestines of animals. So I believe they use the intestines of animals as well as the sinew that comes from, I want to say, beaver tails.
Okay.
Is very, very strong. So that right there is what we would use for cradle boards, for lacrosse sticks, and that is stronger than most modern materials, I would say. when it gets super dry, it gets very brittle, but there's ways of keeping it kind of like moist, I guess you could say, so that it doesn't
Soft.
doesn't crack, you know. Because on this side you can see it broke because it got too dry.
Time, no?
Yeah. I mean, you don't even know how old this thing is. It could be hundreds of years old. I don't even know if we know any dates on some of these artifacts. And like that picture earlier, there is the 50 chiefs represented by the lines of wampum. And those wampum are actually from a quahog shell, which I'm going to show you on the other side here. And we would actually make a lot from these quahog shells. A lot of wampum belts. That's the circle wampum. Those are the 50 chiefs. And for our governing systems, we had the Village Council of Chiefs, we had Ganyakehaga Nation Council of Chiefs, and then the Haudenosaunee Grand Council of Chiefs. So this is just the village. This is the entire Ganyakehaga Nation, and this is the Haudenosaunee Confederacy as a whole. So we had 9 chiefs representing the Ganyakehaga Nation and 50 chiefs in total for the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. So that flag you saw earlier with the 5 nations that we call 6 nations, that's the entire Haudenosaunee Confederacy. Would have been 50 chiefs that were basically in charge, I guess you could say, who are shown here. And you can see actually their names numbered from 1 to 50. You can see all of the different clans here now. So if we want to count them, we got turtle, wolf, bear, snipe, hawk, beaver, hawk, deer, eel, heron, and great wolf. So I don't know if we want to distinguish all of them, but that's roughly 10 different clans throughout the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. The Ganyakehaga have 3. So when you see people that are Snipe Clan or Heron Clan, they're from the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, but they're not Ganyakehaga.
Okay.
So that's 2 ways of distinguishing who is who. One is our name, and the other is our clan. So you know who's from where, depending on what their name is and what their clan is. Also, you know, represented by the feathers that they're wearing on their headdress. So, getting back to the flag, it's actually called the Hiawatha belt. Okay.
Hiawatha belt?
Yeah. It was actually here. Sorry. Because all of this kind of, it's all related to each other. So it says it right here, Hiawatha. So Hiawatha is Deganawida's, I believe, apprentice. I don't know what you want to call him exactly, but he's represented there, Hiawatha. So, Deganawida was given a message by the creator, Sungwaya Dizu, to establish peace amongst the nations. So, Deganawida, along with Hiawatha, traveled to all of the different nations and sat down with them and basically explained that they have a message from Sungwaya Dizu. And that message is to create peace amongst one another. And that's how they came up with the idea of the wampum belt representing the Five Nations. The reason why Sungwe Dizu wanted peace amongst all of the nations was because we were at war for the longest time with everyone. And we weren't going to get anywhere. We were just going to kill each other off. Nothing good was going to come out of it. So we knew thousands of years ago that war has no place here. And when the Ganawida showed up with Ayawata and the Ayawata belt, they showed the different nations that we should come together, and we can come together, and we can be one. So it was documented back in, I believe, the year 902 or something like that, I want to say, by the Europeans or the settlers, that this Five Nations was established. So if we go back over 1,000 years, that's when the Haudenosaunee Confederacy was created. We believe that it was way before that. So the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and all of our governing systems, everything that we know now was created thousands of years ago. Canada, the United States, everybody bases their governing systems on ours. If you look at this, it's exactly what the United States uses. So where do you think they came up with their system of government? Us. And there's no credit given. They stole our land. They stole pretty much everything from us. So why give us credit for that? That's just another one of those things that we won't get credit for. The more we talk about it, maybe it'll be recognized. But there's nothing that we can really do other than educate people. So that same circle wampum with the 50 chiefs is also represented here by this image. And you can also see all of the different clans all together. Down here, you have an arrow and a war club, and that's literally where we buried our hatchets, under the Great Tree of Peace. So when we established this Haudenosaunee Confederacy, that's when we laid down our weapons and we said there will be no more war. So we were done with war over 1,000 years ago. When the settlers came over, we didn't want war. We were there to be hospitable. We treated them fairly. We treated them how we wanted to be treated, with respect. We brought them in. We allowed them to live with us. We showed them how to live, how to survive. A lot of them came off their ships with scurvy, a disease that they never had even seen before. And we had the cure for that. They don't give us too much credit for saving their lives or helping them to survive and thrive, or to even have allowed them to step foot on land before sending them back on their ways. So there was a lot of trickery involved at that time. Basically, the settlers had given us blankets as a gift. We're going to give you blankets. Within those blankets was disease. So they gave us disease-ridden blankets, and when we brought those into our homes, obviously we died. And that was one of their tactics to get rid of us, was to kill us off using disease. So right there is one part of their trickery. Another is they were being friendly to a certain point before they went and they killed us off and tried to burn down all our villages and try to assimilate us. And, the list goes on. Even today, you look at residential schools. Residential schools were created to kill us off. And the last ones were closed down a couple of years from the year that I was born. So it's not that long ago. And there's a lot of people that don't know about residential schools.
and what the government allowed, what the Catholic religion was allowed to do, what the Queen allowed the Catholic religion to do. I had, like I said the other day, a group here from Africa, and they basically said, we've never heard of residential schools. So when I hear that, it's kind of heartbreaking, because there's thousands of children that have died without even having a chance at life. They were taken from their homes to be assimilated, to be brainwashed into this system of, colonization, and basically not allowed to be who we are as a people, as indigenous people. We weren't allowed to practice any of our cultural teachings or dances or language, anything of that sort. They actually cut a lot of our hair, which was long, and that was just one of their ways of assimilating us, making us wear their clothing, cutting our hair to be like theirs, teaching us language that they speak, not what we speak, because they tried to kill the Indian and save the man. And they literally said that. They have said that openly and explicitly, and still to this day, there's nobody that goes and investigates this and, figures out why were they even allowed to do this? Who allowed them to go and create these residential schools? Who allowed them to kill children, to torture children, to strip us from everything that we have? It's something that needs to be investigated. When you look at World War II and the Nazis, how come we can put Nazis on trial, but we can't put priests on trial? Why can't we put the Pope on trial? Why can't we put anybody that is affiliated with the Catholic religion on trial? Why can't they go to court? Because we're Canada? Because we're different? Because we're supposedly a peaceful first world country? No. It's ridiculous, honestly. How they can get away with that, how there's no justice, how the government claims that there's truth and reconciliation that's being done, which is, complete bogus, basically. They claim that they're helping us, but in reality, they're not. They may be giving us some money. They may be saying, we'll help you with this and that, but they're not really doing anything about it. They're not really helping us out. If you look at back when I was young enough to have braces and to go to private school, the government actually gave a lot of money. Today, I would say they barely give us anything. So, as an example, if I wanted braces back then, I got braces because my parents had to pay barely anything, just a small portion of what those braces would cost. Today, if I tried to get my children braces, I'd probably have to pay the majority. And when they say that they're trying to help us, where are they helping us? What are they doing that's helping us? You look at prime example, Premier Legault, Minister of Quebec, that cares about the Quebecois heritage and the language of the French Quebecois, but they don't even really care about the people that are here and were here before them and that allowed them to live here. They care more about the past, let's say, 300 years that they showed up and they decided that their culture is so rich in history and that they should be allowed to protect that. What about us? What about the thousands of years that we were here before them? And why should we be learning French when they don't even learn the proper French? They don't learn Parisian French. They learn Quebecois French. And if you ask anybody in France, it's not real French. If you ask anybody in Quebec, who's your ancestors? Oh, I was born in Quebec. I was born in Canada. My ancestors come from here. Okay, so are you indigenous? No. European. Obviously, settler ancestry. It's clear. Like, they don't even want to admit that they came from Europe. They think that they're an entirely new species with this rich culture and history. They've only been here for about 300 years. And they are the ones that are deciding how do the natives live and what monies they receive and how they're going to go about their lives. Why should they be allowed to control us? And I'm going to show you in a little while, actually, one of the wampum belts that was created. It's called the two-row wampum. And it was to establish a divide between two cultures. It was to show that we're to stay in our canoe and the settlers would stay in their boat. We wouldn't affect each other. We wouldn't put laws upon one another that would affect each other's society. We wouldn't go and tell the other ship, well, you got to speak our language. No, we had a respectful presentation of basically law that we wanted to be followed forever. And when we had these wampum belts that we would go and present to settlers or what have you, those are laws basically that we expected to be followed till the end of time. So for whoever to not follow those, like the Dutch not to follow it, or the Queen in England not to follow those laws that we had presented to them, it goes and it disrespects us, because we created those to be followed to the T till the end of time. We didn't create those to last 100 years and we're going to change our minds. No, these were things that were created for a reason. So I'm going to show you the other side.